Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Not Content Podcast. My name is Jerome and I am joined, as always, by my colleague Brian. Here tonight, we are going to be finishing our conversation on Sergio Leone as we discuss what may not only be one of the greatest westerns of all time, but may also be one of the best movies ever made. That, of course, is the first of his Once Upon trilogy, this being Once Upon a Time in the West. As always, leave a 4 or 5 star review on Apple and Spotify to get those algorithms going. And of course, you should click on the bell icon when you subscribe on YouTube for notifications about when videos go up. Brian, I have to say, I actually watched this even before I watched the trilogy, and I was so incredibly impressed by this movie. And reading about the fact that it originally bombed in the United States was not a surprise, but to me, this is a movie that almost defies the title, the genre in some ways. Like, this is a Western, but I don't think that there has ever been a better Western made before or since. And I will put respect on the name of, Clint Eastwood, who has obviously done a lot of tremendous Westerns. John Ford has, of course, made some tremendous Westerns. And it's not to say that the genre has not had its success stories. I think about a TV show like Deadwood as well. But to me, this is the ultimate success story, not only because of what the movie is in terms of the genre, but what it does with Henry Fonda, what it does with Charles Bronson, what it does with the score, what it does in taking its time. This is one of the most patient movies that I have ever seen, and this is a movie that absolutely could have bombed and not done very well in terms of the quality, but this very simply is one of the best things that we will ever talk about.
I mean, this is a lesson in sound design, like straight up. Like, there's hardly any music in the first 10 minutes, which sounds very suspect for a Sergio Leone movie. But what he does is sets up the tone and the pacing of the entire movie in the first 10 minutes with this sound design that is unbelievable, where it's all natural sound that kind of is used as like a soundtrack to the movie for the first time. That kicks in. So once you do that, it's like setting up the tone and the pacing and the slow build up and the mystery behind some of the characters and the motivations behind the characters. And of course, with Sergio Leone, the first thing you see is a dirty dude's face. And it's just a bunch of dirty dudes' faces in this movie as well. And not only that, I think that like with the American budget that he was provided for this movie, he was able to make a clearer picture than he did in the previous trilogy. And by that, I mean, yes, was like a 4K stream that we were able to watch on Amazon, but it's one of like the best clear from that era. You know what I'm saying? It's very like clean picture for 1968. Everything is pristine. And even though we're in the desert, the camera is still picking up all this great detail. And a lot of it takes place during the day, which I think is a smart move. And I think putting all these wide shots on display just makes the movie even more epic. I think this is a movie you got to watch on like a 70 millimeter. If you can, if it's even on 7 millimeter, I don't know, but like you got to watch it on like a big screen, IMAX style, to fully appreciate the visuals of this movie. Because I watched it on a big screen and I was just engrossed by it. You know, the first time I saw this movie was like a regular TV on a DVD. This time around, a big 4K stream on a big TV, and it was just another experience. It's a tremendous experience to watch this movie. And you know what? I don't even think I've even seen another Charles Bronson movie now that I think about it. But man, when I think of Charles Bronson, I don't think of Death Wish. I think of him as harmonica.
I mean, to me, I think I don't think I ever got Charles Bronson until I watched this movie, and like you, I haven't seen a lot of other Charles Bronson movies, but I am definitely at least curious to go and watch some of his other work after seeing this because to me, this feels like the movie that lets him get those roles, even if this movie isn't financially successful in the States. You've got to believe that some people watch this movie and they're like, well, clearly Charles Bronson is a star. And I think that that is reflected by the fact that, he does go on to have a modicum of success. And again, I don't think that he quite rises to the level of the Clint Eastwood, but I think he is definitely playing in the same ballpark and is able to find some success because of it. And I think that just his face and the way he plays the harmonica, I mean, he is such an important cog in the machine. And I think it would be really easy to forget about Charles Bronson given some of the other performances and given so much of what this movie is. But like he is very important. He is part of what makes this movie work so well.
It's unbelievable that he's almost got one monotone throughout the movie, but it's like he's dead set on this mission that we're not exactly clear as to what the mission is up until the big reveal at the end. And that's what's what you notice with Sergio Leone when it comes to the big reveals. He doesn't kind of reveal things beginning of the movie or halfway through. He reveals it like 20 minutes left in the movie, and then everything starts clicking for the last 20 minutes, which is what we got. And for a few dollars more, and we get this in this case here. And the big reveal is that Frank Henry Fonda actually killed Charles Bronson's brother sometime in the past. And he doesn't even makes me think of like, oh man, this is like that total Bison moment from Street Fighter the movie, where Chung Lee's like pouring her heart out about how he murdered her
Don't you
dad, and
dare
he's like,
compare this to Street Fighter though. Let's not get
I'm just
crazy.
saying that's the same. That's the same. Like, oh shit, that's so cold. Like he doesn't even remember killing your parents, kind of thing. Like that's like some stone cold shit. And the fact that like Frank Henry Fonda doesn't realize who this guy is throughout the whole movie up until the last second before his death, I thought was tremendous. Because the look on his face, it's like he realizes who it is, and then he just dies. So I thought that was like the ultimate revenge. Like he just didn't know who this guy was, and then out of all the people from his past, this one dude was he killed his brother from the past, and then just kills him. It's just a tremendous ending. I think this is a stronger choreographed ending than the Ecstasy of Gold, which I know sounds crazy, but just the way that they use electric guitar, right? And for a time in 1968 where electric guitar was not even that like used that well or even that much, and like you only hear electric guitar and like early punk stuff that leads into like the metal era of the 70s, right? So it's rare to hear this electric guitar, and to hear it in a western, it's just so awesome because it's like kind of recreated and recreated throughout the years. And of course, we see with Terry Funk 10 years later use it as his entrance in the NWA. And that's the first time I hear this theme. And then when I watch when I watch this movie for the first time, I put two and two together and I realized how much of a badass Terry Funk was coming out to this theme.
It was 20 years
Tremendous
later, by
stuff.
the way, because this came out in '69 in the United States, and Terry Funk's big NWA run.
Right. 20 years. And that's when NWA was using like the Batman theme for like the Z-Man, and they were trying to get away with like the Halloween theme with the Samoans. 89 was a crazy year with the NWA in terms of like copyrights and stuff. But if you find that old NWA footage, the ones that wasn't edited out before, WWE took over, like those old VHS still have the harmonica theme, the Halloween theme. So if you find those old NWA tapes from '89, I'd recommend holding on to them because of the original soundtracks you get that were untouched by the WWE.
Absolutely, and so I think it's also worth noting in terms of Charles Bronson originally, Sergio Leone once again wanted Clint Eastwood to kind of be in one of his movies, but Eastwood kind of wanted to move on and do something else. And I have to say, like, I like Clint Eastwood. I don't know what this movie looks like with him, but I almost appreciate the fact that it is a western, but it doesn't have his usual players. There's no Lee Van Cleef, there's no Clint Eastwood, there's no Eli Wallach. It's a new cast of characters, and I think that actually works for the movie extremely well. Obviously, Charles Bronson is very much playing a man with no name type, the very silent, not a lot of dialogue. But I think his presence is, especially given some of the other performers. If you put Clint Eastwood in this movie with Jason Robards and Henry Fonda, I think he almost overwhelms the rest of the movie in a bad way. And I think for the other cast members, Charles Bronson just fits in a lot better.
Yeah, my thing is like I don't think Clint Eastwood works in this movie for this role because to me this role is not he's not a bounty hunter. He's supposed to be this mysterious dude that wants revenge, and he's supposed to be mysterious. We know it enough about the Clint Eastwood no-name character that we're just gonna see Clint Eastwood and just assume the stuff from the trilogy. I think that would again overwhelm, like you said, the rest of the cast. So I think putting Charles Bronson in this role was like perfect because he's not necessarily a star at the time. He's on the cusp, but like he's got this face that's so like a Sergio Leone face where it's got some like grit and grizzle to it, but it can emote the emotions and the storytelling you want, and he can tell a story with his eyes, and that's what Sergio Leone does. So I thought the casting was great. I thought like because I also think that this role is kind of built to be like a minority role, right? Because I mean, it's kind of sort of not explained, but kind of like alluded to that he's an Hispanic character. So I don't
Which
really
is
see that role
problematic in
where,
its own way. I mean, Charles Bronson probably should not be playing a Hispanic,
right,
but
right. I mean, that's aside from that. I think this role that this harmonica character is supposed to be a minority, kind of getting back at like the white. This is how I see it, kind of at the white folk that kind of been terrorizing them. You know, like is this kind of almost like an allegory, right? Kind of the way I see it, especially with the railroad coming through, and the idea of like taking away the land from the people and then trying to expand to the Pacific coast and that ideal. I don't know. That's kind of the way I see it. I think this role of harmonica is built to be a Hispanic character, and I don't think it works with Clint Eastwood as a white boy.
for sure. Let's talk about Jason Robards next. It's funny. We're going to talk, we'll allude to this a little bit later, but with Robert Redford's recent passing, I watched All the President's Men, and Jason Robards won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for that movie. And you watch him in this, and it's very much like he's playing sort of a tough guy in this. And like I definitely associated this role with like Lee Van Cleef. If he was casting his usual roles of usual people, this would be the Lee Van Cleef role. And I mean, Jason Robards just adds so much gravitas to it, and I mean, he is playing like the old capitalist who is just kind of trying to hang on and is not being very successful at it. And I think his role is so interesting because of just what he has to do in terms of his interactions with harmonica. And I really appreciate what he was able to do in this movie. In a movie where like you have Henry Fonda, and he is such an important person, and Sergio Leone is such an important director. The fact that you have Jason Robards, kind of a great actor in his own right, like again playing this supporting role. I mean, he just does a great job of complementing the other people in this movie.
Yeah, and I like the character. I don't know if it was a turn or not because your expectations of this character are a little bit kind of gray, right? Because we know that he didn't kill to make Baines, but he's framed to. But we do also know that he's a criminal with a gang. So it's like, okay, so where's this gray area? Does he kill people for fun? Is he killing innocent people? Does he just rob banks or something like that? And what we come to find out is he's more of like a Robin Hood. It seems like he's more for the people. He does rough for himself. He does get into trouble. He does break out of jail, but he's not like a socio or a psychopathic murderer the way Frank is. So he kind of makes that distinction when he's talking to Claudia Cardinale in the house, where he's like, "I'm not that kind of psycho that people think I am. I'm just a normal like criminal, just trying to get by." You know what I'm saying? And that's that old cowboy way, right? In contrast to where this railroad's coming through and the new way of America's coming through, right? That's what the symbolism in Deadwood was, the symbolism in this movie. So it's kind of him trying to adapt to the new ways, and then he ends up becoming this kind of hero to harmonica by breaking him out of the train. And you don't really expect that because like a area of where this character is he trying to like, is he trying to like play the Mrs. McBain and try to get the land for himself? Is he just trying to like get revenge on Frank for being framed? What does he want to do? And essentially, he just wants to get revenge on Frank for being framed, which is cool. And he does get his revenge, but he starts to realize that like there's a bigger picture here, and that this railroad coming through is like the symbol of like his way of era as ending, right? And which is why there's kind of multiple cuts of this movie. The overall cut we have is the director's cut. I guess initially in the American cut they didn't show his death, which it sucks. He does die in
Just
this movie as he cut
inexplicable to me. Just I don't even
because
understand how you do that.
we didn't see the action sequence. We purposely didn't see the action sequence on the train. That was the final shootout that leads to that dude's death with the guy that was trying to get to the Pacific Ocean. There's like explicitly like a scene
One of the
missing
better train scenes that I've ever seen in this movie, I would say.
for sure, especially using the window and actually using like a small like window of like spacing to actually move the train back and forth on a private track. Great stuff. But yeah, just this idea of this old way coming to an end, and harmonica coming in, getting his revenge, kind of being like, he's the pseudo protagonist, but really the protagonist is more so I think Claudia Cardellini, but because the story revolves around her and
Right.
the
I mean,
way that
her arrival is really kind of the everything else up to that feels like a prologue. This actually feels like the movie is starting.
Yeah, and once she's off the train, and once she starts realizing, holy shit, that her her whole family that she was about to embrace for the first time is completely massacred. It turns the movie on its ear, and then you start realizing how much of a terrible human being the Frank is. After, have you seen the mass? If you watch this massacre, folks, it's like totally like haunting.
It's pretty
It's very
brutal.
haunting because like at one point, the first time you see the first victim, the older daughter shot, but it's from a distance and she just goes down, and you see the father like Maureen, and it's like this total like scream of like God, like Cardinals kind of scream like seeing your daughter die is like the most terrible thing that can happen, and Sergio Leone just shows it to you straight up, and it kind of mirrors that the assault on Precinct 13 scene, which would come later on in terms of the timeline, but still, it's like you can see that like John Carpenter probably got a little bit of that that feeling from this movie where we see another daughter die. So, in terms of like the themes and stuff, it's a very dark movie. Um, I don't even know how this gets a PG rating. I guess yeah, the 60s were weird, folks, but this would
I
definitely be a
don't.
PG-13 today, for sure.
Yeah, I mean this is a borderline horror. And I think what I love so much about the opening scene, like the opening scene in some ways is so exhilarating just because Charles Bronson comes off like a total badass, and you go directly from that essentially into this very tragic murder of this family. And it really sets up the dichotomy of this movie in that you literally have these great, incredible moments, and then they are punctuated with so much sadness. And I think that's one of the things that makes this movie one of the best ever is the way that it is able to go back and forth between these tones and to have these characters to have very conflicting feelings about them. And I think this naturally leads us to talk about Henry Fonda, who is one of our best actors. He is probably best known, I would say, for being the 12th Angry Man. And like that is generally regarded as one of the best movies of all time in its own right. And, you know, Henry Fonda literally turns 11 other people to his side. And that feels kind of symbolic of who Henry Fonda is as an actor. Basically, he's the protagonist in almost every movie he is in. But in this movie, he is playing the villain. And this is what Sergio Leone wanted to do more than anything, was to have Henry Fonda, one of his favorite actors, play a villain. And he is so good at it. It's unfortunate that he does not do it in other movies.
Well, like I was mentioning before we recorded, it's that Hogan effect, it feels like, especially this viewing this time around. It just felt like such a Hollywood Hogan thing to do with like the dark makeup, like the dark, gritty, like dirt stains on the face, with the bright smile and the bright eyes, the contrast at all. So it has that feel of like a betrayal almost, right? Which you kind of want the audience to feel because it's like, holy shit, it's Henry Fonda, like that feeling that he wanted. Like, imagine that feeling when we were a kid. It's like, holy shit, Hogan was the third man. So it's that feeling. I get it, and it's like it's very powerful to see that kind of turn. And it's like, oh man, we don't want to see this actor do these dark things, and he does these dark things, and it adds to the factfulness of the role. So it's a great casting all around, and the way like he even like approaches like dialogue, it's very like villain-esque. He has this feeling of like you that gray dark area. You don't trust him, and he's just this dark character. And like I mentioned, he kills like kids right openly, with no remorse. And it's just a dark character that you don't expect from Henry Fonda, and it just works really well. And up to the point where you get the big reveal at the end that Harmonica's brother was killed by Henry Fonda. That's the big twist. It's like, oh man,
I mean,
this
it's
guy has to
perfect.
go down now. Like we need this revenge. Yeah, we need this moment. And not only that, he shoots the guy in the heart, which I thought was like so well done. Because like again, in the previous movies, they kind of allude to if you're gonna shoot a man, shoot him in the heart, right? So in this case, they kind of set that up where he's got this
And
evil
they really
black
pay it
heart.
off too. I mean, some of the
Yeah.
conversations that Jason Robards and Charles Bronson have, I mean, that kind of makes the movie in some ways. But I mean, just Henry Fonda, and I mean, he's not chewing scenery like you would see like in a like Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained is like chewing scenery like crazy. He's not chewing scenery, but he's walking right up to the edge of it, and I think it works really well. I think this is a movie that has been impersonated a lot by Tarantino. But what I think separates this from a Tarantino is that there is this layer of seriousness and tragedy. Like you don't get the emotions. I think Tarantino always tries to keep some distance between himself and some of the things that happen in his movies. And I don't think that necessarily makes them bad. But what I think truly makes this something that to me is a 10 out of 10 is the emotional uh, package that this presents. That you get these moments of exhilaration, but you also get these moments of tragedy, and you get the incredible emotional payoff of him being shot in the heart. Like that to me says it all about how good this movie is.
And again, it's that music I think that builds up, and it's like a 9 minute theme that kind of gets played throughout the movie every time we see harmonica, and then every time the harmonica and Harry and Fonda are like in the screen together. So it's building and building, and they only had one other scene outside of the final showdown, and I don't heat. You know what I'm saying? Like the same way Pacino and De Niro only met up that one scene in the middle and then had the finale at the end. I don't know if Michael Mann also was obsessed with this movie as much as we are, but again, it has that vibe of like, well, there's these two legendary actors that are about to interact, and they only interact one time other than the finale. So it's like a very special moment when they do interact on the train, right? And I love that moment where like, who are you? And Harry Fonda keeps asking, "Who are you?" And what does Harmonica do? He names all his previous dead victims to haunt him, right? I thought that's one of those coldest, coolest moments you can do in a movie to kind of get back at a murderer to make them feel guilty for what they've done. I've never seen that in a movie where the guy's like, "Who are you?" and he starts naming off his previous victims. Like, I don't even seen that in a recent movie. So I thought that was a
I mean,
genius
that's
writing
yeah,
tool.
that's something you should rip off, honestly. Like straight up, like that's the kind of thing that you could probably do in a movie and get away with it now because I mean, look, Tarantino, look at what he's done over the years, but like that, I mean, you're absolutely right. That is the kind of thing that symbolizes it screams badassness.
I know it's so great because we never even know Harmonica's real name. We just call him Harmonica. Again, with this man with no name gimmick, but Jason Robards is the one that kind of loosely refers to him as Harmonica, and that's what everyone refers to him as throughout the whole movie. But Um, just again, just this just great performance. And again, it's like he shows up off this train in the beginning of the movie, and all we know is that he has this meeting, and we don't know what he's been doing all his life to get to this one moment to get to Frank. So it just feels like it's his whole movie. It's this like whole life that he's had since the moment that his brother died to get to this one moment where he could finally get revenge on Frank. So I know that sounds like a very Tarantino thing to do, but like again, he ripped off a lot of Sergio Leone. So it's like this element of like revenge, right? That seems to like come out of nowhere at the end, like I mentioned with the twist, but it just pays off so well, I think, especially with this mystery of the character and who he is. And of course, I mentioned last week this idea that the guy that kind of put the pressure on the McBains and he hired Frank to kind of put pressure on him, but Frank went too far and killed him. He's this, I guess, what not train operator, train entrepreneur, a guy running the train, and he wants to get to the Pacific Coast, and he's never going to get there, and he dies in a puddle of water. I mean, come on, like that's awesome symbolism right there. Like, so,
I
like
mean,
your
I,
obsession kills you.
I think it's amazing to me that this shit isn't hard, and yet people try to make it seem harder. If that makes sense, like I think there are a lot of people, and this is not just in movie but in TV, that think that you have to put in all this CGI and you have to like have all these twists and like there have to be three layers to every story, and I just think that that's bullshit. And I think that this movie is successful not because of its twists, although there certainly are a couple along the way, but because it literally the movie tells you what it is going to do and then just does it. And you love it because of how it's executed. You don't need to have 16 layers to everything. And it just feels like so many movies are plot obsessed when they should be much more character obsessed. And I think this movie works because of the characters, not because of the plot. And any movie that I would say gets to this level that I think that should be regarded as one of the best movies ever. It's because of the characters. It is not because of the plot.
Yeah, the plot in this case is very much secondary. I mean, all you really need to know is that it's kind of like anti-railroad, which is a theme that Sergio Leone like has presented to us before, but in a way where it's like kind of question kind of thing. It's like, yes, this is our history, but are we proud of our history? Should we be proud of the things we've done in the past and the way we got this railroad to go through our town to get to the Pacific? You know what I'm saying? It's like this very dark theme that, again, Deadwood really picks up the slack with that. So that's a good companion piece to this movie, I think, is Deadwood seasons 1 through 3. But yeah, just this idea that the railroad is just corrupting, right? And that's a theme that we usually see in a lot of these Western movies, and how it's kind of corrupted and changed the way that America was. So that's why I
Yeah.
love these Western movies. It's kind of like this backbone of American history that we kind of ignore, this darker history that we just seem to like, oh, yeah, we didn't. It's not like we didn't take a bunch of Chinese people and make them work on a railroad to their deaths or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, we totally ignore that kind of shit. But, that's history. So,
I
but
mean,
Sergio
if
Leone
you're
is
gonna
like not
watch
afraid
this,
to like
then
show it to you.
what I would say is if you watch this, then immediately go watch Deadwood because you're basically Deadwood feels like an extension of Once Upon a Time in the West in so many ways. Obviously, the craftsmanship isn't there in terms of the look, but I think basically what you're trading is you are trading incredible camera work for incredible dialogue. And I think that given TV shows are always more of a writer's medium, I think that works out. I can't even imagine. Like, imagine if Sergio Leone had directed a season of Deadwood and what that would look like. I mean, I don't even know that you could practically do it because of budget constraints, but it is a wild thought. But again, those two projects are definitely dealing with some of the same material.
For sure. And I think, I was kind of mentioning before we recorded, like, if there's any director that I think can closely resemble the feel and look of a Sergio Leone movie and then even attempt it, I think would be Ryan Coogler, only because I think he knows how to control the camera to tell a story, and not many filmmakers are able to do that. And I kind of cited the prime
Especially
example for
modern
me.
modern filmmakers just can't they
Yeah,
can't do it. I don't know what it
yeah.
is.
So my prime example is in Black Panther, when that shot of like they're in the Black Panther kingdom, and then the camera's upside down essentially. But that's the moment we find out that his cousin was still alive and that he's challenging for the throne. So literally it becomes a metaphor where his whole world is turned upside down, and the camera starts slowly doing a 180 and starts going back to normal, right? So that becomes a metaphor. He does that in Sinners as well. When he opens the doors wide open, right? And then if you see it on IMAX, the whole thing expands on the IMAX screen. So he knows how to control the camera in terms of telling a story. So I think if anyone is close enough to do it, he can do it. But I don't know if he wants to do something like that. But if he ever wants to do a Western, I think Ryan Coogler doing a Western would be an interesting visual, because I think a guy like Antoine Fuqua, who did the Magnificent Seven remake, had like the fun part of it, but didn't have like the gritty filmmaker part of it. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think Antoine Fuqua in so many ways, like Ryan Coogler is the better version of Antoine Fuqua, I would say, and in terms of just what he's able to do with a budget and what he's able to do with female characters, like he's just able to elevate whatever he does, whatever genre he's doing. And I think that's what Sergio Leone does as well. Sergio Leone is somebody who elevates the Western, and that is not to say that there have been bad Westerns before, but I mean, I think Sergio Leone takes it to a completely different level. And I don't think that you're ever going to see it topped. I mean, I like Unforgiven a lot. I think it's a very good movie that unquestionably deserves to be regarded as one of Clint Eastwood's best. But man, like I don't think that movie even like touches a candle compared to this. Like I just think that this is one of the closest things to a perfect movie that we have. And in terms of this genre, like this is to me one of the pillars. This is the pillar of the Western genre. Is Once Upon a Time in the West. I don't think you're ever going to see anything better than this movie in the Western genre. Period. End of story.
I agree. It's been my favorite for a long time. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. My second favorite Western is
An
probably For a
easy
Few
10
Dollars
out of 10.
More.
Like that's
Yeah,
one of the easiest 10 out of 10s I could ever.
yeah, especially with the music and how epic that ending is. But number two would be For a Few Dollars More, and number three, I guess, would be Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and number four would be four. In terms of like the status quo, which kind of makes sense for a lot of people, but I would throw Stagecoach in the loose top 10, right? Because of the way that movie's structured. There's still some good westerns out there, but it's just hard to top this because in terms of the style and
Yeah,
like
I mean,
Sergio Leone, not he does do another western after this, but it's more of like an action movie, and then he never goes back to the genre. So this kind of feels like
he
his
only
like
directs 3 movies after this one.
I know
Like
it's
that's
insane.
that's
It's
crazy
insane.
to me.
I guess he just takes so much time for each movie that I think maybe what happened with Once Upon a Time in America kind of affected him based on what
I'm sorry, he only did 2 movies
the
after this.
background of that movie. You know what I'm saying?
He only has Duck You Sucker and Once Upon a Time in America. That's it.
That's crazy. And I started watching Duck You Sucker, and that's a really, really gritty movie in its own right. But we might need a whole discussion for Once Upon a Time in America because, I mean, from what I'm hearing, like this director's cut was so much different than the theatrical cut that was released. It was such a
I have
difficult.
very conflicting feelings on Once Upon a Time in America. I think it has a lot of problems. I'll just say that. I mean,
Yeah,
it
but
definitely
for some
has its
reason,
great
at the
moments, but
time,
man,
Gene Siskel thought it was the greatest director's cut of all time, and he totally regretted shitting on the theatrical cut. And there's this whole thing about it, and distributors were kind of confused as to which cut they were releasing at the time because they changed it. It's a crazy story, folks, and it cost them a lot of money, the studio. But it ended up being not
it's
even like
very
the
it's
big
very
Oscar
strange.
movie.
It's very strange, but
Yeah, and it's not
to
even
me,
the
I
big
think
Oscar movie that they thought it was going to be. So
yeah, it is it feels very much like Sergio Leone wanted to direct The Godfather. He didn't get to do it, so this is like his Godfather. And I mean, I don't know that like I like Sergio Leone a lot. I don't know that he could direct The Godfather. I don't know that I would want him to direct The Godfather. I mean, Francis. I mean, that movie is a masterpiece in its own way, and is doing something very, very different than Sergio Leone. But I mean, that's what Francis Ford Coppola did.
and that's a whole different discussion because I think we've been kind of building up to. We're like, I think we're going to do a month of director's cuts, just depending on which director's cuts. Because we've discussed Superman 2, obviously. And I mean, obviously, last week, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, the director's cut has become the definitive cut that's on all streaming. So we're gonna kind of talk about that in terms of like, because Ridley Scott has a lot of these movies where it's like the director's cut and the theatrical cut are just so different, and he's done that like 10 or 12 times already. So we can have this whole discussion throughout a whole month of
There's
like
apparently a
director's
4 hour
cuts.
cut of Napoleon that I don't know that I want to watch, but I mean, the 2.5 hour cut was kind of disappointing, so I'm kind of open to it, but we'll see. That may happen at some point. Anything else, Brian? Any other thoughts on Once Upon a Time in the West? Again, one of the best movies that we have ever talked about on this podcast. But this will not be our only 5 star movie, I would argue, that we're going to be discussing this year.
I know, crazy, right? But just to kind of wrap things up, like I don't know if Terry Funk is the one that came up with the idea of like, let me use this for my theme when I'm in the NWA, or I don't know if it was like a producer that threw it at him, but it just fit Terry Funk so well that I think it's one of the best entrance themes of all time in terms of like fitting the character.
It really does work as a
It's like
wrestling
Iron
theme. That's the
Man,
thing, is that
yeah,
there's some movie scores that don't, but the harmonica song is perfect for a wrestling theme.
especially a crazy cowboy like Terry Funk was in '89, just destroying people, pile driving people on the floor, putting people's heads in plastic bags. It just fit, and it just fits so well. So I'm so glad we got that era Terry Funk to associate with Sergio Leone.
All right, so we are going to be hitting Halloween season in 2 weeks, but Brian, next week we are going to be discussing some superhero movies. Brian, we are bringing superhero pantheon back. Can you believe it?
It's been a while. It's been a while, but we can still have a discussion about whether or not Marvel's having a downfall or not. But I mean, it's not like they're saving the box office for people in certain, businesses.
I mean, listen, as we are recording this, there is a lot of conversation just happening about Disney in general. I don't know where we're going to be, 16 months from now when Avengers Doomsday comes out. But boy, oh boy, is Disney in some. Disney is in the. They are in the hot seat, so to speak, and it is well deserved. And we will definitely be talking about that. But I do want to have, I really do want to have like individual conversations, because I think just saying Marvel is having a down year is not really accurate in terms of the creative. I mean, I do want to have. I mean, we're going to talk about Captain America. We're going to talk about Thunderbolts. We are going to talk about Fantastic Four as well. I think those are movies that are worth discussing individually, because I think the quality kind of varies from movie to movie. And we are going to talk about Superman as well, which I am really excited to talk about, because I really loved it. I think it is the best Superman since the first Christopher Reeve movie, and that is one of the highest compliments I can pay because a lot of the Supermans that we have talked about over the years have not been good.
Well, you know my feelings on Man of Steel. I like both, but the one thing that really bothered me in this latest Superman movie is like it's 2025. Why do we have shitty office chairs that are like from the 60s in a building that is modern? I don't know.
I don't
I don't
know if
know.
you I don't know if you realize this, Brian, but we still that is actually accurate.
Come on. Why are we wearing
I
our asses out on shitty metal
Brian, I am
chairs?
telling you, I am being 100% sincere. I'm not trolling you. That is actually accurate.
What are we doing to ourselves, America? We're wearing our asses out, we're wearing our spines out, and we're not being comfortable at work. What's going on?
Life is about comfortable chairs and comfortable shoes, man. That's all I can say. All right. For Brian, my name is Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week when we discuss superhero movies. The return of superhero pantheon is next week.